welcome back. I'm Tedward, and today on this very windy day, thanks to Bond Group in Waltham, Massachusetts, we're having another go in a 2016 Porsche 911R. The 911R is probably my favorite modern 911. It's essentially a GT3 RS Touring, and this car set the stage for what the GT department was going to become in the very near future, because everything this car is what people desired in the GT3s later on. We have a 500 horsepower naturally aspirated flat six with 339 pound-feet of torque, a 6-speed manual gearbox, and lots of lightweight additions, or I should say subtractions, to make it perform. This is the purest expression of a road-going 911 in my opinion. And this one is distinctly different from the previous 911R that we reviewed on the channel, because this has the single mass flywheel. A lot of people opted for the dual mass flywheel just because it makes daily driving a little more supple and easy. This, I think, is the ticket. It's chattery, it's immediate, it's responsive, it's crazy. I love everything about it. Let me show you around the car real quick. So first, this is a wingless GT3 RS. It does not rev to 9,000 RPM because remember, the RS was cut down. That's okay, but this is a very specific sound. And frankly, the sound of this 4-liter has started to grow on me. And now I think I like this better than the 9,000 RPM GT3s that were coming out right after this. It has a very distinct sound. It's a lot more grumbly and grunty and angry sounding than the typical GT3. And then, of course, the subsequent 991.2s. So I think this car has a really special place in my heart just because it's so unique. Inside, you get the 911R door sills. You get carbon buckets with houndstooth inserts. Yes, we like that. And funny enough, we just saw that on the 50th anniversary Porsche from the 2014 911 50th. And this one actually has a little seat protector for this bolster so you don't ruin it when you get in and out of the car. No rear seats and very little sound deadening. So you're going to hear everything coming from the back of this car. Let's open this up real quick. Not much to see back here aside from this great 911R badge, and then 911R 4.0, a couple little electric fans, coolant oil. Not much to see here. This deck does lift up as a spoiler at speed, and then we'll take a look around front, because first you'll notice this is a sticker. This is a sticker too, but they, add lightness, right? You remove the badge and add a sticker, and under here, carbon frunk lid. We love that. A little bit of space for your stuff. And gluing us to the road on center lock 20-inch wheels, a 245 section tire up front and a 305 in the rear, the same as we saw in the 2014 50th anniversary car. However, this does have the PCCBs, the Porsche carbon ceramic brakes. Notably, they're yellow. That was always the nomenclature. Red meant steel, yellow meant PCCBs. However, now you can opt to paint them and do all kinds of other fun stuff. And if you see acid green, usually that's going to indicate that you've got an SE hybrid on your hands. So anyway, I'm freezing. I'd like to go for a drive. And I'd love to talk about why this car is so important, but most notably, we're just gonna go and enjoy some of the sounds of this thing. Now, it is a cold day. We're on Cup 2s. We're not gonna be able to really exploit this car, so please forgive me if I am not sliding around every corner and chucking it in. A, it's rare, B, it's not mine, and C, it's quite cold, but we are gonna be able to rev this out a couple of times and really, oh goodness, this is like the best 6-speed there is. So let's get it started up. Left-hand ignition. We put the key in. What a novel concept in these days. Clutch in. Now ready? I'm going to let the clutch out. Just listen. That's the stuff, baby. So, the dual mass flywheel will shut that up quite a bit. I don't think a lot of people love that sound. Ready? I'm going to clutch in. Quiets down. Clutch out. So you can imagine that some people just really didn't want to deal with that noise. But to me, from an 88 air-cooled 911 guy, like, if your Porsche doesn't sound broken, it probably is. Now, these carbon buckets are only adjustable forward, aft, and you can raise and lower them, which is actually really nice. You get pretty down low in the car. That feels great. And the gauge cluster is gorgeous with the green dials. I love that. Okay, to release the parking brake, pull forward. I almost always do it the wrong way. It's like putting in a USB. I've learned that the trick to that is just pretend it's like a GM vehicle and you're pulling the thing for the little foot brake to go up. We'll put on our sport exhaust and try to avoid all the junk that this windstorm, oh my goodness, all right, we're not going out this way. There's too many branches. We're already in this situation, but hey, good excuse to demonstrate the turning radius of the R. Very maneuverable little car. Everything's immediate. Everything's tactile. You notice it the second you release this clutch. And this is something that's missing in a lot of new cars, even new stick shifts. This thing is absolutely wild. If we put our sport button on, that'll give us our auto blip. Now, 339 pound-feet of torque may not sound like a lot, but on cold cup 2s with salt-covered roads, the grip goes away quickly. So once we get out to a little bit of a faster road, we'll get the revs up where we can really exploit the thing, because right now we're going to be looping the thing if we get full bore into it. But let's talk about why this car is special. They made a limited run of these, 991 of them, in commemoration of its being a 991 generation car. And when it came out, the world went crazy. This one, MSRP, I believe, is $197,000 and change. I want to say that the base MSRP was somewhere around like $185,000. Which in today's 911 world, that wouldn't even get you a new GT3, let alone a limited edition vehicle. But it comes out and everyone goes bananas. These were reselling for $800,000 quick. That's crazy in Porsche land. And the reason was because the 991 generation did not get a manual GT3, and of course not a manual GT3 RS. So here you have the thing that everybody wanted, and they're only making less than 1,000 of them. That's a big problem. Just in case there's any branches down, we don't want to be playing with that kind of fire in a rare 911. So anyway, as we clear this speed bump with, unfortunately, no front axle lift, let's see, we'll go nice and easy. Oh yeah, no problems. Very usable. This is when the world goes crazy and people start demanding that Porsche is going to make manual GT3s. Porsche listens, partially because I think Porsche was annoyed by the fact that everyone was reselling their cars for like quadruple what they paid for them. And so then we end up in the 991.2 generation with the 4-liter GT3 with a manual option. And a lot of people took it. Then they eventually give us the Touring, which essentially is a 9,000 RPM version of this. However, the 4-liter in that car is not the same. It is not the same as the 4-liter in this car. They are different and they rev higher. So you may be able to make some argument that like, oh, that's the better thing. But I've got to say, this is a more unique sound. That car just screams. This car to me sounds a little more Porsche. the thing that I love most about this car is how it's just not insulated in almost any way. It feels like they really just want you to hear and experience every piece of the puzzle. And I honestly find cars with less insulation, less damping, less nannies to be easier to understand and drive. Because when you get into a car that you say, oh, well, that's the bite point of the clutch, it's aggressive, it's this, it's that, without having to also decode, ooh, how is this dual mass flywheel going to behave under these different conditions? All, throttle mapping, all this stuff contributes to things that you have to learn about the car. Is when it feels direct and you don't have to interpret all this other stuff and do all these other calculations, you've reduced the variables that it takes to drive the car. And honestly, it makes the car better to drive. This thing just pulls like a freight train. Oh my goodness, it's fun. It feels light, And I gotta say, that's a tough thing to engineer into a car because it has to be light to feel light, This is such an experience. And yes, we're kind of in an extreme scenario where we have slightly lower traction levels right now. So it's gonna feel a little extreme. But man, does this thing just rocket off the line. I like this better than the last time I drove the car, and the last time I drove one of these, it was the dual mass, so maybe that's contributing to it, that the single mass is the option for me. And I think having driven even more modern Porsches, especially when we talk 992, this car just starts to mean more and more to me. I am hard pressed to find something that sounds this good, and it's not synthetic. It's not piping in any music over the speakers to try to make it sound better. It's just its own raw self, and that is enough. If anything, it's more than enough. It's too much. This would probably scare a lot of people. I mean, if you're sitting in the passenger seat and you're hearing this sound and you're not necessarily certain about how great a driver the person in control is, well, you're going to have a frightening time. You're definitely going to remember the experience. Oh, baby. All right. Somewhat short gearing. I mean, 75 miles an hour, 3,000 RPM, not crazy high revs or anything, but in Porsche land today, you're practically at 1,500 RPM at highway speeds now. So they certainly were gearing this for performance and fun and just ripping through some gears instead of just holding the lowest possible RPM for fuel economy. Let me demonstrate how immediate everything is. Quickly the revs drop into place for those upshifts. It's not slipping that clutch whatsoever, trying to bring those revs back down when you just quickly upshift. Everything just happens the second you ask it to. And it makes it easier to drive because I'm not trying to predict what the car wants or needs. This is something that I go nuts over when we're driving manual Aston Martins, because I always feel like I gotta pull out of the throttle a beat early to make sure that I'm not spiking the revs when I clutch in, all this stuff. This car just is. It is exactly as intuitive as you want a driving experience to be. And if you've only driven this, you probably think, well, yeah, that's what cars are. But no, the level of attention to detail when you calibrate a vehicle is so outrageously specific. To tailor it to a human being's intuition, that's a difficult task. And this car, to me, really hits that on the head in a way that like very, very few automobiles are capable of. I love that I can hear the hiss of the crack of the throttle opening up. Every millimeter of pedal travel means something to this car, whether it's getting on or off throttle, which is great. But like, it does allow you, if you were to upset this car in a corner, like, it's going to behave how you asked it to behave. So you need to be on a little bit. But again, I can't express how sort of light this car feels all the time. It just always, it's insane. It's insane how light this car feels and behaves. I know these are not ideal conditions for the likes of the 911R. Just driving it around town is a unique experience, and it is a not so subtle reminder of what Porsche is capable of. I want you to pay attention to a sound that I'm gonna add and remove. Right now it's happening. You're gonna hear this hiss, almost like a static sound of that throttle, of air coming through that throttle. I'm gonna remove. Silent, and then ready, back on. Off, on, off, on. And I mean, I know it's silly and it's subtle, and every car is doing this actively when you're driving them. It's just that you can hear it. Everything's right there. I'm not one to condemn a garage queen, because I get it. Sometimes cars just, they don't fit into your life in the same way that you anticipated they might. But it's really difficult to imagine having this key in my drawer at home and not just stacking a million miles on it. Like, this is so, it's just so easy. It's not a big compromise, because sometimes you do buy compromise cars where they're too raw, they're too silly, they don't have roofs, they don't have windshields, they don't like to start when they're hot, they don't like to run when they're cold, all this kind of crazy stuff when it comes to classic car stuff. This is where the 911R fits in, because it's a very modern car. It's always going to run, it doesn't require crazy maintenance, and it's like the most rewarding 6-speed manual ever. And you feel all the goodness from a driver's car. Oh, God, it's so good. Best car ever. I add too much throttle, it's just gonna spin. It is. I mean, really, traction is limited here, and we've got to respect that a little bit. My favorite game. How much do we trust a Cup 2 in cold weather with some slick pavement? Not so much. So anyway, that's gonna do it for me. Unfortunately, I'm gonna go put 100,000 miles on this car. This is the best. If you have the means, I highly recommend. It's not just a statement to say, oh, I have a 911R. Like, it lives up to that hype. Like, it is that good. This is one of the greatest 911s ever made, and like, 911s are awesome. So to say that is a real big statement. And if you're wondering, like, am I getting the same experience out of a 991.2 GT3 Touring manual? No. I'm just gonna say it. No, it's not the same. They're different. The difference might not be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to you, but they are different, and it needs to be noted that they are different. It's just how much do you want to pay for that difference, and is it the difference you want? For me, I'd say she's worth every penny. So, thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive. Oof, I'm gonna go listen to this shattery clutch down on my way home to Bond Group. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.